Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another video, and with Chelsea appointing Thomas Tuchel, Chelsea's first German coach, I felt it was necessary to get someone who knew Thomas Tuchel very well and knows his style of play, knows what he does as a coach, his history as a coach too, and sort of get some more knowledge and insight into who Chelsea have just appointed, because we spoke a lot about Tuchel in recent days, but I felt I'm not an expert on Tuchel. I thought it better to get an expert on Tuchel and also German football in the Bundesliga too. This was a great conversation with a great guest in Marius Fischer. Marius is a tactical analyst and football editor, has lots of knowledge about the Bundesliga, but also the Premier League too, and sort of analysing the comparison between the Bundesliga and the Premier League. Tuchel's style of play, looking at the current Chelsea squad, the young players, Callum, Hudson-Odoi, Kai Havertz, Timo Werner, Mason Mount, and what can Thomas Tuchel achieve at Stamford Bridge. Please enjoy this conversation. Please check out Marius's work in the description box below. Go and support him. A great guy, and this was a really revealing chat. So hope you guys enjoy it. Hit the like button if you do enjoy it. Let's get to the convo. So Marius, thank you so much for joining me today. It's going to be an interesting conversation. I'm sure it's been a hectic week for you regarding Chelsea and regarding Tuchel and sort of how it's been for him. I'm sure, you know, as chaotic. How's it been? Because you've been on so many Chelsea streams speaking about Chelsea's new head coach. So what's it been like for you this week?
Yeah, first, thank you for the invitation. I guess this should be the last one because now, I mean, somewhere the Tuchel hype starts to slow down a bit. Yeah, I mean, I was wondering why so many people got to me asking about Tuchel, but yeah, I guess overseas and in England he was not that famous before. Yeah, but I enjoyed it. I mean, I'm a German, I'm an Arsenal supporter, so featuring in so many Chelsea podcasts was a pleasure for me, to be honest. So yeah, I hope I do not repeat too much that I said in the previous one, so it will be a bit more interesting. But yeah.
No, it's all good, and it's interesting for me as we're recording this. I'm sure, like you, I watched Tuchel's first Chelsea press conference. I have to say I was very impressed in terms of approaching that press conference. I think he spoke very well. I think I'm going to enjoy watching him speak about football and speak about Chelsea. Just your impressions on that press conference, because to me, for considering where Chelsea are currently and what's happened with Lampard, I think it's obviously still a sensitive situation. And I think for him coming into a new club very quickly, I think he asserted himself very well.
Yeah, I think this was a thing I told in the other podcast. Tuchel is very well educated and very intelligent, and he knows exactly what to say, but he's not playing it. He is a nice guy. So sometimes he looks a bit snobby for people who don't know him, but if you know him closer, I think he's quite funny. So maybe he is no Klopp, but I also think that Klopp sometimes is a bit over the top. Tuchel is not that much over the top, but he is funny. So I think he is authentic, and this is the most important thing for a coach. I think he is not playing a role. He's just like he is. And I think, yeah, people need to get used to him because he's different to some old English coaches. But yeah, all in all, I think he's a really good guy.
Mm-hmm. I definitely get the sense he's scientific about the game. He's a student of the game. You know, everything I've been reading about Tuchel and sort of his approach to the game. He, you know, obviously cares a lot about tactics. Anytime he was asked a question about formation or tactics or player attributes, his eyes lit up. You could tell he was very excited to talk about that element of the game. In terms of sort of the English media, and I don't know if you pick up on this, there is a sense, and I've seen it with coaches before, especially foreign coaches, that there is the way he talks about the game can sometimes be taken in a negative way. I mean, I think that's, you know, a little bit regressive, and I'd rather people have more of an open mind. But do you think that's something that he could sort of butt heads with it in terms of when he talks about recoveries, say like last night, he spoke a lot about recoveries, and that's something that sometimes a few English fans sort of take a little bit, like they sort of get quite hostile to.
Yeah, I think Tuchel also need to adapt. I mean, he was in a lot of countries, hospitated a lot of other clubs and other sports. I think he exactly knew what he dived into is when accepting the job at Chelsea. But I think he also needs to adapt to the English media, of course. I mean, in Paris, thing was no one really cared about it because it was Ligue 1 and everyone knows Paris will win it. So the media was not that harsh on him and on his comments, because I don't know if I watched any press conference when he was at Paris Saint-Germain. So he knows that there will be a lot of attention and a lot of questions of people trying to maybe provoked him a bit because they know he talks a lot about football. But yeah, all in all, I think he will do well with it.
The pressure of this Chelsea job, and it was one of the first things he was asked in a press conference, was about taking this Chelsea job and the pressure of it and the expectation to win titles. He said the word titles a lot in his first few words as Chelsea manager. He clearly wants to stress it, and that's clearly from the hierarchy on him as well. It's interesting to me because I read the book, The Edge, where he had an interview in that book, and you found a lot about sort of his psychology and sort of the way he approached. That was when he was at Dortmund, and obviously there was a connection to Dembele and sort of developing young players. And he spoke about going to a type of club that does have this short-term mentality, and he seemed pretty opposed to it back then. What changed? Because obviously took the jump to go to PSG. Do you think there was something changed within him to take that job? Because obviously there are comparisons between PSG and Chelsea and sort of the mentality and the pressure of those clubs.
Yeah, I think his Paris time will certainly help him now, because I mean, he started as a youth coach, no pressure at all to win things. Then he went to Mainz, which was like also without any expectations, because nobody knew him at that time. So it was all a bonus, everything a bonus that he achieved with Mainz. Then he came to Borussia Dortmund, and you felt a bit that it was in the first weeks a bit difficult for him, because the jump from Mainz to Borussia Dortmund is quite big. So I think he was not always feeling that comfortable in this situation. But now, of course, with the 2 years at Paris and the experience he had at Dortmund with the terror attack on the bus and so on, so he had to face some difficult situations in the last 4 years. So I think these help him to now face these tasks at Chelsea. So I think if we jump directly from Mainz to Chelsea, I have no hope he would make it. But with the experience he got in the last few years, I think it's helped him.
Yeah, I definitely get the sense, you know, like when Maurizio Sarri took the job at Chelsea, he was coming from Napoli to Chelsea, and there's a very different culture and expectation level from Napoli to Chelsea. And I do agree with you that maybe having that experience at Dortmund and then PSG, there's a progression there, isn't there, in terms of the level of expectation at each club. So hopefully he's a much more rounded coach and individual when he's arrived at Stamford Bridge. I want to speak about tactics and sort of approach, and obviously your Twitter handle, Gegenpressing. And I think it's something that, you know, I've studied about and looked at, but in terms of the school of German coaching, I think it's really interesting in terms of where Tuchel comes from, and obviously those comparisons to Jurgen Klopp and Ralf Rangnick and sort of the philosophy of Gegenpressing. Could you just explain what is Gegenpressing basically, and what we could expect to see maybe from Tuchel at Chelsea?
Yeah, so basically Gegenpressing in English must be counter-pressing, I guess. So, basically it means to recover the ball when you lose it as quickly as possible back. So if you lose the ball, you try to get it back in the first 2 or 3 seconds, not because your coach wants to, but there's the biggest chance to get it back, because this is the time the opponent is still unorganized and you can, get the ball back. Klopp really was one of the people who brought this word to Germany and who brought it now to England. So I think no one in the Premier League talked about gegenpressing that much before. It comes a bit from Ralf Rangnick, from RB Leipzig, because their philosophy is a lot dependent on this pressing and gegenpressing. I think now in Germany it's turning around a bit again, because I think there was a time where every club in Germany tried to press and they focused too much on the game without the ball. So they did not do much with the ball, and I think that's problematic, because if you are pressing but not really know what to do when you have possession with the ball, you don't really know how to score goals. So I think a lot of teams in Germany, they do a twist now and try to focus more on the ball, on the possession with the ball and positional play. So I think a mixture is important, and I think Tuchel is not really known for that intensive pressing like Liverpool is doing it, or like RB Leipzig is doing it. But I think you saw yesterday some glimpses that he really wants to get the ball back as soon as possible. Not because he is a fan of pressing, but he wants to have the ball. And if the opponent got the ball, you need to get it back. So I think there were sequences in the second half, especially, where you really thought the players knew that they should get the ball back as quick as possible. And I think, Tuchel is a good mixture of, possession-based game, but also, he wants to have the possession, and to get possession, you need take it from your opponent away.
It's interesting because Chelsea have started to go in that direction, more possession-based side. I think back to Conte, I think back to previous managers, and there was a sense before that we were much more a reactive side, counter-attacking team. But it's interesting now that I think hopefully with Tuchel, it's that sense of not too much he's sort of ripping up everything that's happened before him. There's a sense that it's just maybe hopefully refining and making our team better than it was under Sarri and Lampard. So hopefully that will be the case. It's just, I got a question from someone, a fellow Chelsea YouTuber, Nini FC, about gegenpressing and sort of the difference. And I guess this is more in reference to Jurgen Klopp, because of course we don't know how Tuchel's going to do in the Premier League and how Chelsea's going to look under him really. The difference sort of implementing gegenpressing, say, in the Bundesliga compared to the Premier League, because I know sometimes there are comparisons made to both leagues, maybe for the sense of intensity, but there's probably a difference in challenge, right, to implement that in England compared to Germany.
Yeah, I think the Bundesliga was once called a Umschaltliga, which is in English something like, to switch, so from defense to offense. And there were really games in the Bundesliga where there were always switch-off games. So one team lost possession, won it back again, lost possession again. So I think the Bundesliga, from a technical perspective, is not as good as the Premier League. So Premier League, of course, got better individual players. So I think that's maybe the challenge Tuchel or all German coaches had to face. Also Hasenhüttl, I mean, it took him over a year now to really adapt to the Premier League, because I think the Premier League players are more press resistant than the Bundesliga players, in my opinion. So the Bundesliga is not really that much different from the intensity, I think. I think it's a bit of a myth, because the Premier League is good in promoting and all the intensity stuff. Maybe it's true, but not that much of a difference. But of course, the Premier League players, I mean, if I look at all these central midfielders in the Premier League, in all teams, you will find one or two players with a great ability on the ball, pressing resistant. You don't have it in the Bundesliga that much. If you look at the lower club teams, they can't really hold the ball for a longer period. So I think you have to time your pressing better. So you cannot just press with intensity. You also need to press with your brain, because otherwise the same happens like in La Liga last night with Valencia against Sevilla. Maybe you saw that sequence where Sevilla just passed the ball out of Valencia's pressing. I think it was Valencia, because it was just too not structured enough. And without a pressing structure, you won't succeed in the Premier League, because the players are just too good.
That has been a problem for Chelsea under Lampard, and even at times under Sarri in some case of that, especially in midfield. We've had a real problem in midfield for quite a while, and it's going to be interesting to see how Tuchel sort of deals with that area. And I just wonder as well, just in terms of approaching the league, I wonder last night against Wolves, do you think Tuchel's going to be surprised by the defensive nature of certain teams in this league? Because there's a lot of teams who, just like Wolves last night, will come to the bridge, almost two backs of four, sit very deep, very almost parking the bus, of course, in that sense. But I'm sure in Germany, as you described, and maybe even in some sense in France as well, you don't face teams like that quite often. Do you think he's going to have a difficulty sort of adapting to those tactics in the Premier League?
Yeah, the thing is, I think he can adapt, and he will be quite flexible, and he will try to find solutions. But of course, I mean, I talk a lot of positive things for Tuchel, but of course, if there is a problem with Tuchel teams, it is obviously the same like all teams or all coaches who want to play position-based football. Same with City. If they face a team like Wolves yesterday, they are really reliant of taking the 2 or 3 chances they get, because against low blocks, it's never easy. So also Tuchel is no coach who got a team that just breaks these teams for fun. It's never easy against them. And I think the difficulty is that the teams in the Premier League, despite playing defensively like Wolves yesterday, they have players like Podence or like Adama Traoré. You don't have these in France or in Germany. So in Germany or in France, it was most likely the case. Paris or Dortmund they were dominating possession over 90 minutes without really having the fear of getting a goal against them, because the opponent does not have this individual quality in front of the goal. So they could just pile the pressure more and more till they score. But yesterday you saw that Tuchel was a bit afraid of Adama Traore's pace, so they tried to dominate it, but it was not 100% commitment because they knew one counter-attack and it could be a goal. And I think this is the difference, because in the Ligue 1 and the Bundesliga, if the opponent got a counter-attack, they most likely would not score. So I think, the fear of the individual quality, even of teams like Wolves or even Sheffield got good counter-attack quality. We saw it yesterday. So I think this will be the challenge for Tuchel to find the mixture, the balance between dominating possession and not really conceding on a counter-attack every game.
It will be. It's something that, brilliant coaches like Klopp and Guardiola have really, especially more Guardiola for making sort of comparisons in terms of possession-based teams, has struggled with in recent years. I want to talk about going back to the start of his career, obviously in Stuttgart and working with the youth team, working with academy players. This is something that has been brought up about with Tuchel and coming to Chelsea with so many young players. We saw Callum Hudson-Odoi at right wing back for the first time in a Chelsea shirt last night. We also, we think about Mason Mount, think about Tammy Abraham, Reece James, Billy Gilmore. There is, I guess, a bit of trepidation from some fans about the young players and how well they developed under Frank Lampard and the chances they got, that now with Tuchel coming in and the pressure to win titles, those young players will now find their opportunities more limited. What can you say about Tuchel and his sort of approach? Because from what I've seen from his career, like with Dembele, like with Pulisic earlier in his career, there is a sense this is a guy who speaks very glowingly about young players and wants to give them opportunities. Do you think our young players will thrive under him?
Yeah, I think so. So I heard a lot of these thoughts that Chelsea fans might think he will not build on the future. But we saw it yesterday with Callum Hudson-Odoi. I think no one really expected him to play. And I think I always compare him to Guardiola in this department. They are both not coaches who just throw the academy players in, no matter how good they are. So you saw Guardiola is quite selective with them, but in the end, look at Foden, look at Zinchenko. He just relies on these youth players who he really thinks they can make it. So he's not throwing every player in there. If it's a cup game or Champions League, Euroleague, he doesn't matter. He just plays the best players. And I think Tuchel is the same. It's not like he had no youth players in Paris. I mean, this Mitchell Becker, the left fullback, he's now a starter for Paris, and he was scouted, or he was brought up by Tuchel. But it's really not like he will throw everyone just in there. It was not at Dortmund, it was not at Mainz, but he really is a guy who likes working with young players because he knows how to improve them. Look at Dembele. I mean, we saw in the last few years how hard it is to work with him because he is quite a difficult character. Not a bad character, but difficult. So Tuchel really got the best out of him, and I think this is his strength, that he's really individually treating these players how he thinks they need the treatment. So that's my hope for players like Havertz, because I really like Havertz. I would love to see him get back to his best, and I think there are not many coaches better than Tuchel in really getting him back to his best.
We'll quickly get on to Havertz and Timo Werner, because they've been two names that have been obviously brought up with Tuchel's arrival in terms of that German connection, but also the need to get two massive signings start playing. But just a little bit more on that, on the young players in Chelsea's squad. I do wonder, out of all the names, and he could promote, he could use all of them, the likes of Reece James, Mason Mount, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Tammy Abraham. They've been first team players this season. It's a tough question, but do you think there's one that you'd look at and go, he may look at that player as sort of a project player to take under his wing, and you think that player can sort of thrive under Tuchel in his system?
Yeah, maybe it's really Callum Hudson-Odoi. I mean, you would not say that he should be a prospect anymore if you looked at him 2 years ago, where he was really on the jump to a superstar already, linking with a lot of big transfers to Bayern Munich and so on. But he had some problems, injury problems. So he is now in a state where it's really a decisive point of his career. And I think we saw yesterday that Tuchel is really a coach who wants to have these 1-versus-1 situations, to create overloads on one side, switch the side, and then have 1-versus-1 players. And I think Hudson-Odoi is perfect. I'm not sure if he will always start him, because I can well imagine bringing him on at the 70-minute mark with his qualities, dribbling qualities. He could be a very important player. But I think, yeah, these players who are really, really technical, I think Billy Gilmore could be another one who would really be a player Tuchel likes because he brings also the mentality. Also Mason Mount. I mean, last night when he came on, you really saw that he's not a youth player anymore. He was quite matured yesterday, and I think, yeah, it's also the mentality and the passion that Tuchel wants. He's not a coach who likes these players who are just playing for their own So I think there was a small anecdote in a training session with Mainz. There was a youth player, I think it was Sean Parker. He's not really had a good career afterwards. And there was a training session filmed by the media. And Sean Parker was in the 11 versus 11. Sean Parker was dribbling too much and he was losing the ball all the time. And he refused to run back. And Tuchel, he really exploded and shouted at Parker. I tried to translate it to English. He used the words, "You're just playing for your own style. Everyone else is trying to follow the team, but you are just playing for your own." And Tuchel hates these kind of things. Same as Guardiola. I remember when he slandered Thiago in the training at Bayern Munich because Thiago, he did a backflip and a back heel. And yeah, coaches don't like that because creativity is good and freedom is good. And I think Tuchel wants this creativity in front of the goal. But as long as you really need to hold possession, you just need to do your job. And if you don't do your job and lose the ball, I think it's shit for him.
I think with the young players we do have, I think all of them, especially the main ones we were talking about, I think have great mentalities. I think Callum's got that mentality. Mason has been Chelsea's best player for quite a while now in very difficult moments. I think he'll be a player that Tuchel, I think, will love because I think he just so committed to Chelsea, and Tuchel said as much in his first press conference. And Tammy, especially Reece as well. I think the quality of Reece, just on Reece James, because I think we struggled a bit not having him because he's such a key player for us. In terms of Reece James, that natural quality to cross the ball into the box, I just wonder, Lampard really relied on it. Do you think Tuchel will as well?
Yeah, I predicted him to really be a starter for Tuchel because, like I said, Tuchel really likes one of his trademark moves, tactics, is this chip ball over the defense to the full. We saw that yesterday, not often, but sometimes you saw Ziyech cutting inside and playing this ball over the top to Chilwell. And I think Azpilicueta, he has his strengths, obviously, but he's not the guy who runs down the line and gets into the channel. So I think if you have this player on both sides, obviously helps. But if you look at Paris, he had on the right side mostly defending with Thilo Kehrer, who is a bit similar to Azpilicueta, a bit more physical, a bit more solid, but not the quickest one. So yeah, it will be interesting what Tuchel plans there. If he stays with this three at the back, or if he switches to a 4-4-3 maybe, 4-3-3, sorry. So, but I think the pace of Reece James will be crucial in Tuchel's plans. So that's what I predicted.
Yeah, I think he's going to see a lot of the squad in the upcoming weeks because we've got so many games, and he's a manager naturally that does a lot of rotation and changes, formations, as we know. Want to talk obviously about Havertz and Timo Werner. And Kai played last night against Wolves, and I think there were moments where I think he looked really impressive. I think in terms of his energy, in terms of his work rate, it was a bit of a shame actually because there was a few moments where he got into the box, and unfortunately Chilwell didn't find him. He took us some really good positions. Timo, I think the interesting thing about Timo is from a Chelsea perspective, I think he's such a unique forward compared to fellow Chelsea strikers of the past. We've always relied on more bulky physical strikers, Drogba, Costa, even Giroud, even Tammy Abraham to some extent does that. Firstly with Werner, because it's just interesting to me, maybe trying to get him off a focal point like he was at Leipzig with Poulsen. Do you think that's something Tuchel will be looking at?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the thing with Werner is a lot of people had a false expectation of him. I mean, he is a good striker, a very good striker, but he played in an ultra-offensive style at Leipzig. So Leipzig scored like 80 goals last season. They created plenty of chances every game. So obviously Werner was allowed to miss some of these chances because 1 minute later he got another one. And in the first weeks with Chelsea, it was not like Chelsea created that many chances. So if he missed one, probably he didn't get another chance. So of course, it was a bit difficult for him, because he knew I just get 1 or 2 chances every game, and he is not clinical. He never will be clinical, but his pace and his positioning and his movement normally should allow him to get at the end of these balls every game. And I think he's a confidence player, no matter about that. I mean, he scored like 6 or 7 games in a row at Leipzig, and then 5 games he did not score, and then 5 games he scored again. So he is tricky, and he needs confidence. But if he gets it, he must be a starter. I mean, I was surprised he did not start yesterday. Maybe, I mean, we talked about Tuchel being intelligent, and you saw the press conference. He knew exactly. I think he also knew how the fans reacted to him. So I think he did not want it to fulfill all their prejudice. So bring in all the German players and don't use any youth player. I'm not sure, but it could be that he thought, okay, you know what I mean. So maybe he will start in the next game. Not sure if he will be a striker or left winger, because at Leipzig he was also very prolific as a left winger, cutting inside. So yeah, many options for him, but I'm sure he will be getting his numbers up in the next few weeks.
And Kai Havertz is a very interesting one, because I feel Chelsea have lacked someone from midfield of his ilk. I know he's a very unique talent, and it's not just about his goal scoring, because of course he developed his creative side for Leverkusen, especially last season. And looking at stats, he seems to get better in the second half of season. So hopefully that replicates itself this time for Tuchel, arriving midway through the season for him. What do you think about him? Because so many arguments about where Havertz's best position is, a bit like Timo Werner. Frank played him as an 8. He played him as a 10 in a 4-2-3-1. We saw him last night more as a inverted winger, or sort of a, I guess you'd say, a roaming 10 with Hakim Ziyech on the other side. Sometimes they'd switch. What do you think about, Tuchel and this Chelsea side, and where Havertz could fit in to get the best out of him?
I think it is a bit more difficult with Havertz than it is with Werner, because with Werner, like I said, it's all about confidence. But with Havertz, I'm not sure how much this COVID situation still plays a role, because I think he's still not 100% fit. And I mean, it is not really a matter of tactics then, it's just his fitness. It could be that it's still playing a role. But on the other hand, I remember I was on a podcast at the start of the season, in a Chelsea podcast, talking about Kai Havertz, and I compared him a bit to Mesut Özil, which sounds a bit bad nowadays, but I mean, Havertz is a player, his body language, his how he's moving on the pitch. If he's not performing well, a lot of people really, he is quite a good target for fans, because he's not the kind of guy who is tackling and recovering the ball. So he really relies on performing, because otherwise fans, I'm not talking about coaches, but fans don't really see a point in playing him. Different to Pulisic, for example. Pulisic can play how he wants. He has this mentality, this passion, this recovery work rate. He's always a good player to have on the pitch. You saw yesterday that I feel the players took a little bit quicker to get off the ball. So they took a first touch and then passed the ball. First touch, pass the ball. I think the quicker the game gets, the more Havertz will improve, because he was used to this quick, direct approach at Leverkusen to find these pockets. But I think if the game is too slow, he is in the right pocket, but he can't get the ball, and then he needs to move to another pocket. So in the Premier League, these open spaces are quite rare. So if there are 5 or 6 moments in the game where Havertz is really in this pocket in front of the box, you need to find him, and you can just find him with quick passing. And you saw yesterday, when Chelsea passed the ball quickly, he was in a good position to receive the ball. And I think, this free role behind the strikers could really suit him under the Tuchel tactics.
I feel that with Havertz, that there's so many different varying factors. Obviously you mentioned COVID. Obviously that's going to have a massive impact on him in terms of his fitness. But I also feel he was the focal point of Leverkusen. So much of their play was based around him, tailor-made for him. Whether he was a false 9, whether he was a little bit more in the middle or on the right of, say, a front 3. It's difficult at Chelsea because he's no longer the big fish. There's so many other big players around him, and I think so young as well. I think that's something people need to take into account. So young. Lastly, I want to ask you, and it's probably the biggest question I've asked you, is what can Tuchel achieve at Chelsea? Not just, obviously, he's got, 4 or 5 months this season. Obviously, the aim is going to be to get into the top 4. We've got the Champions League against Atletico Madrid and the FA Cup. But I'm more thinking towards next season, when he's had a full pre-season, hopefully to work with his players, maybe get some new signings in. Because it's quite clear now from everything we've heard about Lampard, top 4 is not good enough. Not even just, if you get 3rd or 4th place, it's not deemed acceptable. And he quite clearly is going to be aiming the Premier League title next season. So what are your impressions on that?
Well, I think the biggest thing I want Tuchel to achieve, and I said it on my Twitter yesterday, I really like coaches who put a trademark on their team. So you watch a game of Chelsea and you immediately know this is a Tuchel team and they play a certain way of football. And I think this was missing with Frank Lampard. They played some good football at times, but it felt all a bit like they were just coming onto the pitch and, okay, maybe today we play like this and like that. So there was no clear philosophy, I felt. So it's the same with United. I mean, they are 2nd place now, but I don't think the United team got a real philosophy. They're relying a lot of individual quality, and sometimes it lets you down. So this will be the first task to really implement a clear playing philosophy at Chelsea. This is not a thing that Sarri did, because Sarri's philosophy, he also tried to do that, but Sarri is so special. I don't think you can build on it. But Tuchel's philosophy is quite flexible. So I don't think if Tuchel will be fired in 2 years, there comes a new coach and says, what was he doing the last 2 years? So I think Tuchel's philosophy is more mainstream, to say it like that. But of course, Tuchel is a guy who wants success more than any other coach. Maybe you saw that in the interviews he gave. So he is a really, winning mentality guy. So not sure about this season. Like I said, I expect Chelsea to get into top 4 because the rivals are just too bad. I mean, there's City winning the league, obviously, but after that, not sure if even Liverpool can come back to full quality. So they should qualify for the Champions League next year. But then I think, I'm not sure what the board told him. If it's a 3-year plan, a 2-year plan, I think it depends a bit how much money they offer him to spend, because I said that yesterday, he will buy a new playmaker, deep line, obviously, because Jorginho is not his first choice. I guess he played okay yesterday, but I think it's Jorginho. I like him, but you won't win titles with him. That's my opinion on him. Same with a ball playing centre back, because Thiago Silva, you never know how much he has left in his tank. You never know. So I think these 2 positions, a ball-playing defender and a ball-playing deep-lying playmaker, are his main priorities. If he gets that right in the summer, I see no reason why they're not challenging for the title, because I'm not sure if Guardiola will be at City after this season. I doubt it for some reason. So same with Klopp. I think it could be next season could be a special season where it could be really good for Chelsea to have this season as a preparation season. And then, when other teams are facing a difficult time next year, and same with Arsenal, for example, I expect Arsenal to have a very good season next year. And I think Chelsea the same. So they should focus on Champions League, obviously, because there are certain players next season you can just get if you play Champions League football. But talking about this Champions League season, I said that all the time. Don't see Chelsea coming through against Atletico. They're just too good. Nothing to do with Chelsea or with Atletico, because they're just too good this season. So they should be able to concentrate on the league. And it's not like they're 15 points away, so it's all open. So I expect 4th place or even 3rd place for Chelsea this year.
I think where we are now, I think that would be seen as progress, to be honest, or at least, especially 3rd place. I said 3rd place at the start of the year. And it's going to be exciting, because I he's a serious guy. He's a serious coach. He's someone with big ambition, and feels a little bit like the Conte appointment in a sense, you know, a guy who comes in and has a track record, and as well there's that progression as we spoke about earlier in his career that I think could really work well for Chelsea now. But thank you, mate, so much for coming on the channel. Really insightful. Thanks for, you know, your knowledge and your insight, because, you know, hopefully the viewers as well know a lot more about our new coach. As I do with all my guests on the channel, I want to give you the opportunity to shout out where people can find your work online. Yeah,
I have a Twitter account. It's called Gegenpressing 91, so you know where I'm coming from. Yeah, I do mostly some data visualizations on there. Maybe you saw them. If not, check them out. And yeah, thank you for the invitation. I hope I did not repeat too much I said previously. It's not always easy because my English is not that good all the time. So yeah, thank you for the invitation. Really enjoyed the talk.
All good. And all of Marius's work, the links will be in the description box below. Please go and follow him. Great guy to follow on Twitter. And thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.